You think wealth is about effort. You think it's about working harder, waking up earlier, doing more, pushing further, enduring longer. That's what you are taught. That if you sacrifice enough, one day abundance will finally knock on your door. But what if I told you that belief is exactly why so many people keep struggling and never actually move forward? Because wealth doesn't begin in your hands. It begins in the invisible field you carry. It begins in the energy you transmit before you ever say a word, in the signal your presence sends, without asking for permission. You can say you want success. You can repeat affirmations. You can write goals. You can visualize a better life. But if, deep inside, there is still fear, guilt, scarcity, doubt, fear of being judged, fear of having more than the people around you, then your own energy is blocking what your mind says it wants. And this is where most people fail. They try to change their life without changing the frequency they live in. They try to attract wealth while carrying an identity trained for survival. They try to build success with a mind conditioned to chaos. They try to look confident on the outside while still feeling small on the inside. And the world can feel that. Life can feel that. Opportunities can feel that, because you don't attract what you want. You attract what you have become. Your aura is speaking for you all the time. Before any result shows up, the signal has already been sent. Before a door opens, your energy has already decided whether you're ready or not. Before money stays, your internal structure has already revealed if you can hold it, or if you are still built for lack. Maybe no one has ever told you this clearly, but I will. There are people who remain stuck, not because they are incapable, but because they were trained to emit scarcity, trained to shrink, to feel guilty for wanting more, to confuse humility with invisibility, to call fear being realistic, to call limitation maturity. And while they wait for life to change, nothing changes. Because wealth does not respond to desperation. It responds to alignment. It responds to certainty. It responds to who you are when no one is watching. So if you feel like you're working hard and still not moving forward, if you feel like something invisible keeps pulling you back, if you've tried mindset, visualization, discipline, and something still feels blocked, then this message is for you. Because today, you're going to understand something most people never realize. Your aura is not something mystical in a vague sense. It is your emotional pattern, your identity, your baseline level of self-worth, the energy you have trained yourself to carry every single day. And if it was trained, it can be retrained. You can change your signal. You can stop repelling what you desire. You can become someone who no longer chases validation, approval, and small outcomes, but someone whose presence begins to attract opportunities, respect, confidence, and real abundance. And that is exactly what we're going to build here. Not with empty motivation, but with depth, clarity, and real internal transformation. Because it's time to stop asking for wealth with your words, while your energy is still saying no. Before we go deeper, I want to invite you to do something simple but meaningful. If this kind of message resonates with you, take a second right now and subscribe to the channel. Because here, you won't just find temporary motivation. You'll learn how to reprogram your mind, strengthen your identity, and build a presence that can actually sustain prosperity. And I want you to comment this below. I choose to align with abundance. Let's see how many people are ready, not just to want a different life, but to become the version of themselves who can finally receive it. Now, let's go deeper. Because up to this point, you've started to realize that something invisible is operating before results ever show up. But this is where everything changes. There is a silent law governing your life right now. A law that does not negotiate. A law that does not care how much you want something, how hard you work, or how many times you try. It responds to one thing: alignment. You can call it the law of resonance. And it works in a simple but unforgiving way. Every thought you repeat creates a pattern. Every emotion you feel intensely reinforces that pattern. And every belief you hold deeply turns that pattern into identity. And that identity becomes a signal, a field, a constant frequency that you are broadcasting without even realizing it. And that signal is what life responds to. Not what you say, not what you post, not what you show to other people, but what you carry. Because the world does not react to your performance. It reacts to your internal state. Think about it. How many times have you seen someone who is highly skilled, but lacks presence? And at the same time, someone far less qualified, but somehow commands attention. There's something about them. A presence. A quiet certainty that doesn't need to be explained. That's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's frequency. That's alignment. Now pay close attention, because this is critical. Right now, you are operating in one of two ways. You are either a magnet or a repellent. There is no neutral state. If inside you there is constant doubt, fear of losing, comparison, that subtle feeling of this is not for me, then no matter how much you try to move forward, your own energy starts blocking, delaying, and distorting your results. And this happens invisibly. You miss opportunities and call it bad luck. You meet the wrong people and call it coincidence. You hesitate when it matters and call it insecurity. But in reality, all of that is perfectly aligned with the signal you are sending. Now on the other side, when there is clarity, when there is certainty, when there is a deep sense of worthiness, even if the results haven't fully shown up yet, things begin to move. People respond differently. Doors open with less resistance. Opportunities appear more often, not because the world changed, but because your signal changed. And this explains something most people don't understand. Why two people can do the exact same thing and get completely different results. One struggles to get attention. The other attracts it naturally. One needs to convince. The other is heard without effort. One chases. The other seems to be pursued. The difference is not just action. It's the energy behind the action. And here is the most common mistake. People try to fake this state. They memorize phrases. They repeat affirmations. They force confidence. But internally, they still feel fear. They still feel scarcity. They still see themselves as someone who hasn't arrived yet. And the problem is, life does not respond to what you try to show. It responds to what is real inside you. You can say, I am confident, but if your body is tense, if your mind is anxious, if your emotions are filled with doubt, that is the real signal, and that is what gets amplified. That's why so many people feel stuck, because they believe they're doing everything right, while ignoring the most important factor: internal coherence. Emotional alignment. Congruence between what you think, feel, and believe. Without that, strategy won't save you. Effort won't save you. Trying harder won't save you. There will always be an invisible force pulling you back. So let me ask you something that might be uncomfortable, but necessary. When you are alone, when no one is watching, when you don't have to prove anything to anyone, what is the state you naturally return to? Is it calm or anxiety? Is it confidence or doubt? Is it abundance or constant worry? Because that answer reveals your baseline frequency. And it's not what you do occasionally that shapes your life. It's the pattern you repeat daily. If your emotional baseline is still rooted in scarcity, no matter how much you try to grow, you will keep creating situations that confirm that state. But if you begin to elevate that baseline, if you start training your mind, regulating your emotions, and stepping into a new identity, something begins to shift. First internally, then externally. And that is why everything starts here. Not with strategy, not with money, not with results, but with what you are transmitting right now. Because whether you realize it or not, you are already sending a signal. The only question is that signal attracting the life you want or keeping you trapped in the life you already know? Because what I'm about to tell you, most people will resist, not because it's complicated, but because it challenges everything they've been taught to believe. Wealth does not begin in your bank account. It begins in your imagination. And that's exactly where most people fail. They are waiting for evidence before they allow themselves to believe. They are waiting for results before they change how they feel. They are waiting for money before they act like someone who can handle it. But that's backwards. Completely backwards. Because the people who actually build and sustain wealth operate in the opposite direction. They believe first. They embody first. They rehearse success internally before it ever becomes visible externally. They don't wait for proof. They become the proof. And this is where something critical happens. Your body, your nervous system, must feel safe with wealth, because if it doesn't, you will unconsciously sabotage every opportunity that comes your way. And most people have never been taught this. They think the problem is lack of opportunity, lack of knowledge, lack of strategy. But the real problem is internal resistance. Let me give you a simple example. Have you ever noticed how some people get close to success, and suddenly everything falls apart? They procrastinate. They overthink. They make poor decisions. They push people away. They create unnecessary problems. And from the outside, it looks like bad luck. But from the inside, it's self-protection, because their system is not calibrated for that level of expansion. It feels unfamiliar. It feels unsafe. It feels like something that might be taken away. So the mind steps in and pulls them back to what is familiar, even if what is familiar is struggle. This is why so many people win money and lose it, not because they don't know what to do, but because they don't know how to be. Their identity didn't change. Their emotional baseline didn't change. Their internal structure didn't change. So the money had nowhere to stay. And eventually, it leaves, because wealth is not just a number. It is an emotional signature. It feels like stability. It feels like expansion. It feels like certainty. And if your body is still wired for stress, fear, and scarcity, you will reject that experience, even if you consciously want it. So the real question is not, how do I make more money? The real question is, can I hold the feeling of abundance before I see it? Can you walk into a room without needing validation? Can you speak without shrinking your value? Can you make decisions without fear controlling your behavior? Can you move like someone who already knows it's going to work? Because that is the training. That is where wealth begins. Not when money arrives, but when your identity stabilizes. And this is where most people get trapped. They become addicted to external validation. They need results to feel confident. They need approval to feel worthy. They need proof to feel safe. And because of that, their emotional state is constantly unstable. One good day, they feel powerful. One bad day, they feel lost again. And that inconsistency destroys alignment. Because wealth responds to stability, to consistency, to certainty over time, not emotional spikes, not temporary motivation, but a grounded internal state that does not collapse under pressure. And that's why imagination is not optional. It's essential, because imagination is where you begin rehearsing the identity you haven't fully stepped into yet. It's where you practice thinking differently, feeling differently, moving differently, until it becomes natural, until it becomes familiar, until it becomes you. And when that shift happens, something powerful begins to unfold. You stop reacting to your current reality and start creating your future from within. You stop waiting and start becoming. And that is the moment where everything starts to change. Not all at once, but in a way that is undeniable. Because now, you are no longer trying to get wealth. You are becoming someone who can sustain it. Now let's go even deeper. Because if wealth is not just about effort, and if your internal state is shaping your results, then we need to face something most people avoid. You were conditioned, not just influenced, conditioned, programmed over years, to think, feel, and behave in a way that keeps you small. And the most dangerous part is this: it doesn't feel like conditioning. It feels like you. It feels like your personality, your way of being, your reality. But in truth, a large part of what you believe about money, success, and your own potential was never consciously chosen. It was absorbed from your environment, from your family, from the people you grew up around, from conversations you didn't even realize were shaping you. Think about it. If you grew up hearing things like, money is hard to earn, rich people are greedy, you have to struggle to deserve something, be realistic, don't aim too high, people like us don't get that kind of life, those weren't just opinions. They became instructions, quiet commands that your mind accepted as truth. And over time, those beliefs didn't just stay in your thoughts. They moved into your identity. They became the lens through which you see everything. So even when you say you want more, there is a part of you resisting it. Not because you're weak, but because your identity is trying to stay consistent. An identity always wins over desire. Always. You can want success all day. But if your identity is still wired for limitation, you will find a way to stay where you are. You will hesitate when it matters. You will downplay your value. You will avoid opportunities that require expansion. You will question yourself right before stepping forward. And then you'll tell yourself, I just need more confidence. I need more time. I'm not ready yet. But those are surface-level explanations. The deeper truth is this: you are trying to create a new life with an old identity, and that creates internal conflict because one part of you wants to grow, and another part of you is trying to protect what is familiar, even if what is familiar is limitation. And this is where most people get stuck for years. They keep adding strategies, more information, more techniques, more content, but they never address the root, who they believe they are. Let me tell you something clearly. If deep down you believe that having more will make you judged, you will unconsciously avoid visibility. If you believe that success will distance you from people you love, you will sabotage your own progress. If you believe that money brings pressure, responsibility, or risk, you will push it away, even when it comes, and you won't even notice, because it won't feel like self-sabotage. It will feel like this just didn't work out. This is how powerful identity is. It filters your decisions. It shapes your behavior. It defines what feels normal and what feels uncomfortable. And anything that feels too far outside of your current identity, your system will reject. Not because it's bad, but because it's unfamiliar. And your mind is wired to protect what is familiar, not what is possible. So if you've been living in scarcity, then abundance feels risky. If you've been living in doubt, then certainty feels unnatural. If you've been playing small, then expansion feels threatening. And until that changes, your external life will keep reflecting your internal limits. So the real work is not just thinking positive. It's reprogramming identity. It's questioning everything you assumed was true. It's noticing the beliefs you didn't choose and deciding if they still deserve to stay. Because the moment you start seeing this clearly, something shifts. You stop blaming circumstances. You stop waiting for permission. You stop needing validation to move forward. And you begin to understand, I am not stuck because I lack ability. I am stuck because I've been operating from an identity that no longer serves me. And that awareness is the beginning of real power. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And once you realize that your identity was built, you also realize it can be rebuilt, deliberately, intentionally, with awareness. And that is where transformation actually begins. Not when you change what you do, but when you change who you are being while you do it. Now let's make this real. Because at this point, you understand something important. Your results are not random. They are not just about effort. They are a reflection of your internal state, repeated over time. So the question becomes, where does that state come from? How is your aura actually built? And the answer is simpler than most people expect. Your aura is not created in big moments. It is built in small, repeated ones. It is not defined by what you do once, but by what you do every day. Every thought you allow, every emotion you hold, every reaction you repeat, is training your internal pattern. And over time, that pattern becomes automatic. It becomes your baseline, your default way of thinking, feeling, and responding to life. And here's the key. Your aura is not your best moment. It is your most consistent one. It's not who you are on a good day, when everything is working. It's who you are on a normal day, a random afternoon, a quiet morning, a moment when nothing external is forcing you to perform. That is your real frequency. That is your signal. And that's what life responds to. This is where most people get it wrong. They believe that short bursts of motivation will change their life. They feel inspired for a few minutes. Maybe after watching something like this, they think differently. They feel powerful. They say, this time it's going to be different. But then, they go back to their day, and slowly, without noticing, they return to the same emotional patterns, the same worries, the same doubts, the same reactions. And because of that, nothing really changes. Because consistency beats intensity. Every single time, you don't need a perfect mindset for 10 minutes. You need a stable mindset across your day. Let me show you something clearly. If you spend 10 minutes visualizing success, but the rest of your day feeling anxious about money, guess which signal wins? If you repeat affirmations in the morning, but spend the afternoon comparing yourself to others, guess which identity you reinforce? If you try to act confident in one moment, but constantly question yourself internally, guess which version of you becomes real? It's not what you say occasionally. It's what you live repeatedly. That becomes your aura. That becomes your baseline. And that baseline becomes your reality. So if you want to change what you attract, you don't start by chasing outcomes. You start by stabilizing your internal state. This is what I call emotional discipline, or emotional hygiene. And most people completely ignore this. They clean their house. They organize their schedule. They plan their goals. But they let their mind stay chaotic. They let their emotions run uncontrolled. They let negativity repeat without interruption. And then they wonder why nothing changes. But your mind is an environment. Your emotions are a pattern. And if that environment is disorganized, your life will reflect that. So the real work is this. You begin observing your internal patterns, without judgment, but with awareness. You notice how often you return to doubt. You notice how quickly you fall into worry. You notice what triggers insecurity. You notice what drains your energy. Because once you see the pattern, you gain power over it. And then comes the next step. You interrupt it. You don't let it run automatically anymore. You don't let one negative thought spiral into 10. You don't let one moment of fear define your entire day. You catch it early. You shift it. You replace it again and again. and again, until a new pattern starts to form. And this is where transformation actually happens. Not in one breakthrough moment, but in repetition, because repetition builds familiarity, and familiarity creates identity, and identity becomes your signal. Your aura is not something you hope changes. It is something you train, deliberately, daily, through what you allow and what you reinforce. So let me ask you something honestly. What are you rehearsing every day? Are you rehearsing confidence or doubt? Abundance or lack? Certainty or hesitation? Because whatever you are rehearsing, you are becoming. And whatever you are becoming, you are attracting. That's the loop. And once you understand that loop, you stop trying to change your life all at once. And you start changing your pattern, because when the pattern changes, everything that comes from it changes too. The 4 pillars of a wealthy aura. Now that you understand how your internal state is built, we need to give that structure, because awareness alone is not enough. You need something you can hold on to, something you can return to every single day. So let me show you the 4 pillars that shape a powerful, magnetic, wealth-aligned aura. Not theory, not motivation, but principles you can actually embody. Pillar 1, certainty. Certainty is not loud. It doesn't need to prove anything. It doesn't argue. It doesn't beg. It simply knows. And that changes everything. Because people don't trust the most intelligent person in the room. They trust the most certain one. You can have the best idea, the best strategy, the best plan. But if your energy is uncertain, people will feel it, and they will hesitate. But when you move with certainty, even if everything is not perfect yet, something shifts. Your words carry weight. Your presence becomes stable. Your decisions become clearer, and people respond differently, not because you forced them, but because certainty is contagious. Now understand this. Certainty is not something you wait for. It's something you decide. You don't wait until you feel ready. You choose to move as if you are. Because if you keep waiting for confidence, you will stay stuck. Certainty comes from commitment, from choosing a direction and standing in it, even before the results show up. Pillar 2. Calm. Most people think success comes from intensity, from pressure, from constant urgency. But real power comes from calm, because a chaotic mind cannot hold abundance. If your emotions are unstable, if your thoughts are constantly reacting, if your energy is always in survival mode, then even if opportunities appear, you won't sustain them. Calm is what stabilizes your signal. It tells your system, I am safe to grow. I am safe to expand. I am not desperate. And this is critical, because desperation repels. Calm attracts. When you are calm, you don't chase. You choose. You don't react. You respond. You don't shrink. You stay grounded. And that stability creates trust, not just in others, but within yourself. Pillar 3. Congruence. This is where everything either aligns or collapses. Congruence means your thoughts, your words, and your actions are in agreement. Most people live in contradiction. They say they want success, but avoid responsibility. They say they want growth, but resist discomfort. They say they believe in themselves, but constantly doubt their decisions. And that creates internal noise, mixed signals. And life does not respond to mixed signals. It responds to clarity. So if you say one thing, but feel another, and do something else, your signal becomes weak, unstable, inconsistent. But when everything aligns, when what you think, say, and do move in the same direction, your energy becomes powerful, focused, magnetic, because now there is no internal resistance, only movement. And that is when things begin to accelerate. Pillar 4. Contribution. This is where most people misunderstand wealth completely. They think wealth is about getting more money, more results, more recognition. But real wealth is built on value, on contribution, on becoming someone who solves problems, who creates impact, who gives without constantly calculating. Because when you focus only on receiving, you operate from lack. But when you focus on contributing, you step into abundance. You stop asking, "What can I get?" and start asking, "What can I build? What can I improve? What can I offer that actually matters?" And that shift changes your entire relationship with success. Because now, you are no longer chasing opportunities. You are becoming someone who creates them. And people feel that. They trust that. They are drawn to that. Now, when you bring these four pillars together, something powerful happens. Certainty gives you direction. Calm gives you stability. Congruence gives you strength. Contribution gives you purpose. And together, they form the foundation of a wealthy aura. A presence that does not need to force, does not need to convince, does not need to chase, because it is aligned. And alignment is what attracts. So from this point forward, don't just ask yourself what you want. Ask yourself, am I moving with certainty? Am I grounded in calm? Am I acting in congruence? Am I focused on contribution? Because if the answer is yes, then your signal is changing. And when your signal changes, your results have no choice but to follow. Your environment is an amplifier. Now let's talk about something most people underestimate, your environment. Because at this point, you might be thinking, okay, I understand my mindset matters. I understand my internal state matters. But here's the truth. Your environment will either reinforce your growth or silently destroy it. There is no middle ground. Your environment is not neutral. It is an amplifier. Whatever you carry inside, your environment multiplies. So if you carry doubt and surround yourself with people who complain, who criticize, who expect the worst, that doubt doesn't stay the same. It grows. It becomes louder, stronger, more convincing. But if you begin to build certainty, and you place yourself in environments that reflect growth, that same certainty expands. It becomes natural. It becomes your new normal. And this is where most people sabotage themselves. They try to change internally, but stay in the same external conditions, the same conversations, the same influences, the same energy. And slowly, without realizing, they get pulled back. Let me be direct with you. You cannot build a powerful mindset while constantly consuming weak input. It doesn't work. You cannot think abundantly while listening to scarcity every day. You cannot grow while surrounded by people who are committed to staying the same. And this is not about judging anyone. This is about awareness. Because every environment has a frequency. Every room has a tone. Every conversation leaves a residue. And over time, that becomes part of you. What you listen to becomes what you think. What you think becomes what you feel. What you feel becomes what you transmit. And what you transmit becomes what you attract. So if you want to change your results, you must take responsibility for what surrounds you, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, digitally. Pay attention to what you consume every day, the content you watch, the voices you listen to, the conversations you engage in, because that is shaping your internal state, whether you realize it or not. If your day is filled with noise, fear, negativity, distraction, your mind has no space to stabilize, no space to grow, no space to align. But when you become intentional, everything changes. You begin to protect your input. You become selective with your environment. You choose what you allow into your mind. And that is power. This doesn't always mean you need to leave everything behind overnight. But it does mean you need to become aware of what is draining you. What is weakening your signal? What is pulling you back into old patterns? Sometimes it's people. Sometimes it's habits. Sometimes it's the content you consume for hours without noticing. And sometimes it's the environment you've normalized for so long that you no longer question it. But let me tell you something clearly. You cannot evolve while holding on to everything that was built for your old identity. At some point, something has to change. And yes, that can be uncomfortable, because growth creates distance. It creates new standards, new priorities, new ways of thinking. And not everyone around you will understand that. Some people will resist it. Some people will question it. Some people will try to pull you back, not because they want to hurt you, but because your growth challenges their comfort. And you need to be ready for that, because this is part of the process. When your frequency rises, what no longer matches it begins to fall away. And that is not loss. That is alignment. So instead of asking, why is this changing? Ask, what is this making space for? Because when you shift your environment, you shift your reinforcement. And when your reinforcement changes, your identity stabilizes faster. Your new patterns become easier to maintain. Your growth becomes sustainable. And your signal becomes stronger. So from now on, be intentional. Not just with what you do, but with what you allow. Because your environment is always shaping you. The only question is it shaping you into who you want to become, or pulling you back into who you used to be? The 3 daily rituals that reprogram your aura. Now we bring this into practice, because understanding without action changes nothing. You can listen to powerful ideas all day, but if your daily patterns don't change, your life won't change either. So instead of giving you something complicated, I'm going to give you something simple, but powerful. 3 daily rituals. If you apply them consistently, they will begin to reshape your internal state. They will stabilize your energy. And they will start reprogramming your identity from the inside out. Ritual 1: emotional audit every day. You need to become aware of what you are feeling, not occasionally, not when things go wrong, every day. Because most people are not in control of their emotions. They are reacting automatically, carrying feelings they never question, and repeating patterns they don't even notice. So the first step is simple. Pause and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And then ask something even more important. Does this emotion serve the person I am becoming? If the answer is no, you don't ignore it. You don't suppress it. You interrupt it. You shift it. Because if you let one negative emotion run unchecked, it doesn't stay alone. It multiplies. It influences your thoughts, your decisions, your behavior, and eventually your results. So you must catch it early. Not perfectly, but consistently. This is how you stop living on autopilot. This is how you take back control. Ritual 2: aligned affirmation. Now, this is where most people get it wrong. They repeat words without changing their state. They say things like, I am successful. I am abundant. I am confident. But internally, they feel none of it, and that creates resistance. Because your body doesn't believe what your words are saying. So this ritual is not about repetition. It's about alignment. You are not trying to convince the world. You are training your nervous system. You are teaching your body what it feels like to be stable, to be safe, to be expanded. So instead of just saying the words, you slow down, you breathe, and you feel them. I am safe to grow. I am capable of handling more. I can hold success without fear. And you stay there for a moment until your body begins to respond. Because when your body believes, your signal changes. Ritual 3: embodied visualization This is where identity begins to shift. Most people visualize from the outside. They imagine themselves becoming successful, like watching a movie. But that creates distance. This ritual is different. You visualize from the inside. You step into your future self, and you see through their eyes. How do they think? How do they move? How do they respond under pressure? How do they carry themselves in a room? You don't observe it. You become it, even if just for a few minutes. Because repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity reduces resistance. What once felt impossible starts to feel normal. And when something feels normal, you stop resisting it. You start moving toward it naturally. Now when you combine these three rituals, something powerful begins to happen. You become aware of your patterns. You interrupt what no longer serves you. You reinforce a new internal state. And you begin to embody a new identity, not occasionally, but daily. And that consistency is what creates real change, not motivation, not inspiration, but repetition. So here's your challenge. For the next 30 days, commit to this. Every day. No excuses. No perfection required. Just consistency. Audit your emotions. Align your affirmations. Visualize your future self from within. And watch what begins to shift. Because at first, you'll notice small changes. More clarity. More stability. Less internal conflict. Then, you'll notice something else. People start responding differently. Opportunities begin to appear. Decisions become easier. And things that once felt difficult start to feel natural. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because you did. And when you change your internal state, your external reality has no choice but to follow. The pre-game energy ritual, the advanced edge most people never use. Now let me show you something most people never learn. Not because it's complicated, but because it requires awareness and intention. This is what I call the pre-game energy ritual. And if you understand this, you stop reacting to life and start preparing your presence before anything happens. Because here's the truth. Most people walk into important moments unprepared, not unprepared in skill, but unprepared in energy. They enter conversations carrying doubt. They walk into opportunities with tension. They face decisions with fear already activated. And then they wonder why things don't go the way they expected. But by the time you enter the room, your energy has already spoken. Before you say a word, before you present your idea, before you ask for anything, your signal has already been felt. So instead of trying to fix your performance in the moment, you prepare your state before the moment. That's the shift. That's the advantage. So here's how it works. Before any important situation, a meeting, a conversation, a decision, a presentation, you pause. Even if it's just for a minute, you step away from the noise. You close your eyes, and you take a few slow, intentional breaths. This is where you interrupt your current state, because whatever you were carrying before, you don't bring it in automatically. Now here's the key step. You don't visualize the event. You visualize the outcome, but not as something you hope will happen, as something that already happened. You see it clearly. The conversation went well. The decision worked in your favor. The opportunity opened. The result exceeded your expectations. But here's what most people miss. You don't stop at the image. You move into the feeling. You ask yourself, how do I feel now that this worked? Relief? Confidence? Certainty? Calm? And then you stay there. You let your body experience that emotion fully, because this is where the shift happens. When your body feels like the result already happened, fear loses its grip. Tension dissolves. Overthinking decreases, and your behavior changes naturally. You are no longer trying to succeed. You are moving as someone who already did. And that is a completely different frequency. This is not imagination for entertainment. This is emotional rehearsal. This is training your nervous system to operate from certainty instead of fear. And when you do this consistently, something powerful begins to happen. You start showing up differently, more grounded, more clear, more present, not forcing confidence, but carrying it. And people feel that. They trust that. They respond to that. Because again, people don't just react to what you say. They react to how you make them feel. And your state determines that. So from now on, stop walking into important moments unconsciously. Stop letting your default state decide your results. Instead, prepare your energy before you step in. Decide who you are going to be before the moment begins. Because when your internal state is aligned, your actions become sharper, your communication becomes stronger, and your presence becomes undeniable. This is the edge, not more effort, not more pressure, but preparation at the level most people ignore. And once you start using this, you'll realize something. You were never lacking ability. You were just entering moments in the wrong state, letting your old self die. Now we need to talk about something most people avoid, not because it's complicated, but because it's uncomfortable. Real change does not happen by adding something new. It happens by letting something old go. And in many cases, that something is a version of you. Because at this point, you might be thinking, I understand the mindset. I understand the habits. I understand what I need to do. But here's the truth. You don't need more information. You need separation. Separation from the version of you that keeps pulling you back. The version that doubts. The version that hesitates. The version that seeks approval. The version that plays small to feel safe. That version has a pattern. A familiar way of thinking. A predictable emotional response. A comfortable level of limitation. And even if you don't like it, it feels known. And what is known feels safe, even when it's holding you back. So every time you try to grow, that version reacts. It whispers, don't do that. What if it doesn't work? What will people think? Maybe later. And it sounds reasonable. It sounds logical. But it's not guidance. It's protection. Protection of what is familiar. And this is where most people stop. They feel resistance and assume it means they're not ready. They feel discomfort and assume it means something is wrong. But in reality, that discomfort is a signal that you are stepping outside of your current identity. And that is exactly where growth happens. You cannot expand while staying the same. You cannot become more while protecting everything you've been. At some point, you have to decide, not slowly, not someday, but clearly, that you are no longer available for that version of yourself, the one that minimizes your potential, the one that avoids responsibility, the one that waits for the perfect moment, the one that chooses comfort over expansion. Because here's the truth most people don't want to hear. As long as you keep feeding that version, it will keep controlling your life through small decisions, through subtle hesitation, through quiet self-doubt, until years pass and nothing really changes. So the shift is not just external, it's internal. You stop negotiating with your old patterns. You stop explaining your limitations. You stop justifying your hesitation. And you start moving differently, even when it feels unfamiliar, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels like you're not fully ready. Because readiness is not what creates change. Decision is. Now understand this. When you begin to change, your environment may react. People may question you. Some may distance themselves. Others may not understand your new direction. And that's part of the process. Because when your identity shifts, your reality reorganizes. What no longer matches you starts to fall away. And that can feel like loss. But it's not. It's alignment. You are not losing what matters. You are releasing what no longer fits who you are becoming. And yes, this requires courage, because you are stepping into something new without full evidence yet. But that's exactly how transformation works. You move first, then the results follow. So let me ask you something directly. If you continue thinking the same way, responding the same way, making decisions from the same identity, where will you be 1 year from now? The same place? The same patterns? The same frustration? Because nothing changes until you do. Not temporarily, but fundamentally, at the level of identity. So this is the moment, not tomorrow. Not when it's easier. Now, you decide. Who are you no longer willing to be? And who are you ready to become? Because once that decision is made, everything else begins to align. Your actions, your standards, your environment, your results, all of it follows. But it starts here, with the willingness to let your old self go. Now this is where everything comes together, because at this point, you don't just understand this. You feel it. You can see where you've been operating from. You can recognize the patterns, the reactions, the identity you've been carrying without even noticing. And now you have something most people never get: awareness. But awareness alone is not enough. If you leave this here, if you go back to your routine, if you fall into the same patterns tomorrow, nothing changes. And you already know that. So this is where you decide, not casually, not emotionally, but intentionally. For the next 30 days, you train your aura. Not when you feel like it, not when it's convenient. Every single day, you commit. You start with awareness. Every day, you check your state. What am I feeling? Is this aligned with who I'm becoming? If not, you shift it. You don't let it run your day. You align your internal language, not empty repetition, but real emotional alignment. You teach your body what stability feels like, what certainty feels like, what expansion feels like. You visualize from within, not watching your future, becoming it, thinking like it, moving like it, until it stops feeling distant and starts feeling natural. And before every important moment, you prepare your energy. You don't walk in carrying doubt. You don't walk in reacting. You walk in decided, grounded, aligned. And as you do this, something begins to happen. At first, it's subtle. You feel more in control, less reactive, more clear. Then it grows. You start making different decisions. You stop tolerating what drains you. You begin to move with intention. And then the external starts to reflect it. Opportunities shift. Conversations change. People respond differently. Not because you forced anything, but because your signal changed. And when your signal changes, your results follow. But understand this. This is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming consistent. You will have days where it feels easy, and days where it doesn't. Days where you feel strong, and days where old patterns try to come back. That's part of the process. But this time, you don't go back. You don't reset. You don't quit. You continue. Because now you understand what's really happening. You are not trying to change your life. You are building a new identity. And identity is built through repetition. So here's the question. Not what do you want anymore, but what are you willing to become? Because once you become it, you don't need to chase anything. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to force results. Your presence starts doing the work. Your energy starts opening doors. Your decisions start creating momentum. And your life begins to align with who you are. So don't leave this video the same. Don't go back to old patterns like nothing happened. Take this moment seriously. Decide, right now, that you are no longer available for the version of you that lives in doubt. that lives in fear, that lives in limitation, and step into something higher, something stronger, something more aligned. Because the truth is, you are never lacking potential. You are never lacking ability. You are never lacking opportunity. You are operating from the wrong signal. And now you know how to change it. So if this message resonated with you, if something in this video made you think differently, see yourself differently, then take action now. Subscribe to the channel, because this is not about motivation. This is about transformation. And I want you to comment this below. I am becoming someone who attracts. Write it, own it, and commit to it. Because from this moment forward, you are no longer chasing a different life. You are becoming the person that life responds to. And when that happens, everything changes.